In this video, we're going to be using our new 22-inch by 7-inch surfboard mold. As you can see, it is a surfboard shape. It's 1.5 inches deep. It's perfect for making beach-themed and ocean-themed art, and we're going to be doing that today. This is going to be a multi-stage pour, so we're actually going to use create like a rock and sand or rock and soil base, and then we're going to come back, do the ocean part, and then the waves in the end. This is a simple process, so if you follow along, again, these are our Crafted Elements 22 by 7-inch surfboard molds. I believe we're going to be making a larger one as well if you're looking for something a little bit bigger, and longboard molds, things like that. So these are very, very durable molds. Very thick walled. This particular one is 1 inch or 1/2 inch thick, 1.5 inches tall. Before this video, I went ahead and I sprayed the mold with our epoxy mold release, 8329 by MG Chemicals, which is purchased on Amazon or local hobby stores, things like that. You can also use a smooth-on product like the Smoothies or Smooth Release 200. We do have a list of recommended mold releases on our website. Why do you use a mold release? We get this asked all the time. We get a lot of people damaging their molds over time when they don't use a mold release. Epoxy resin is very hard on silicone molds. The chemicals in the epoxy, the heat from the epoxy reaction, the exothermic reaction is not great for silicone. So what the mold release does is it creates a small thin barrier around the entire perimeter or interior of the mold that's not really allowing the epoxy to directly touch the mold. That's going to extend the life of your silicone mold notably. If you don't use a mold release, you might only get 5 to 8 pours out of this mold before you can't use it anymore. And these are not cheap molds. So we definitely recommend you invest in the mold release spray. This spray, might be 20 bucks, but it's going to give you like 40 or 50 pours, worth of molds, pores rather. Anyway, so how are we going to do this? We've got some rocks here, some river rocks, and I've already pre-mixed some regular casting resin and I've added some antique bronze colorant to that. I'm going to be the first to say I'm not really a resin artist. I like make charcuterie boards and tabletops and things like that. Doing like fine art with resin's not my thing. So if you're watching this and being, why is it so dark? I think it should be more of a sand color, but it's not. What we're going to do here though is to get the resin and rocks to stay on one end and create like a natural shoal, just like you would in the real ocean. We're going to use a panel under this, a flat panel under this, and tilt it upwards. So that's a cool little trick. Make sure it's flat, because if it's not, you're not going to end up with a flat piece. So here is what we're going to do. As you can see, it's flat. We're going to take a couple of rocks or something, or one of our little lifters here, and put it underneath. So now you can see it's low here, high here. That's going to allow us to put our pieces here and have the resin level out this way. So when we come back and do the next stage of the pour, we're going to have the ocean on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some rocks in here. This thing's probably going to weigh a ton by the time we're done. This is going to represent the shoreline or the beach. And again, the resin is going to penetrate through all this and create, fill all those voids. You're not going to see all these rocks because of the color of the resin. Take our resin, pour it right into the mold. Whoops. Over the side of the mold is really not where the resin wants to be. Obviously, you want to keep the height of the rock below the height of the mold, or the top of the mold. All right, so now that we've poured our first coat, our first layer of resin, thrown our rocks in, and you can see we've already got an angle happening here. We've got a lot more resin on this end, very little resin on this end. And that's going to create our beach effect once we come back and put a translucent blue resin over this. So let's go to that part now. Okay, we're back the next day and our resin is fully set And we can now proceed with the second layer of resin. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the board off of this angled board, put it flat on the table, so now we have a flat surface where the resin is going to run everywhere. It's not going to run on an angle anymore like we had before. And what I've done is I've pre-mixed two different color blues. I've got a completely clear lighter blue, and then I've got a darker blue with a little bit of pearl pigment. And I've got the two blues because, you know, with an ocean, the water gets lighter as it gets closer to shore, darker as it gets out to ocean or out to sea. So what we're going to do is I've used a little piece of 3/8 inch HDP to basically use as a separator temporarily, so our resin doesn't initially mix, but before it sets, we're going to come pull that out so it can mix a little bit. Otherwise, if you just put the light blue here and the dark blue here, the heat and everything, it's going to get really, really mixed quickly, and then you won't really have that nice gradient we're looking for. And then once we're done that, once that's set, you can come back and do the clear top with the waves and things like that. So that's it. So we're just going to go ahead and pour our next layer. Here is our darker, which has a little bit of pearl pigment in it. And here's our lighter. I also wanted to make note that you'll notice the spacer I literally just placed in there. You never want to glue or silicone or epoxy, I guess doesn't matter, but glue or silicone any spacers in there. You don't want to glue down wood. You don't want to do anything like that, because if you glue anything or silicone anything into a silicone mold, it's not going to be like an HDP mold where it just comes out. It's probably going to bond to the silicone, and then once you take it out, you're going to take a piece of silicone out with it. So don't ever glue anything or silicone anything inside of a silicone mold. Just use, you know, the weight of a spacer or the tension of the mold to place things like dividers in. All right, about an hour has passed since we poured the two blues. Since we're using a regular casting resin, not the deep pour, we can see that it's starting to gel up just a little bit. So now would be the time where we can pull this divider out and we can let them mix. So it's still setting. It's going to heat up and that's going to mix a little bit, but we should have a nice gradient from the sand to the shallow water to the deep water. Okay, we're back the next day and you can see that our gradient's really, really nice, but we still have rocks protruding from the top of the surface here. So we're going to go and do the final layer of resin, roughly, you know, a quarter inch, maybe less than a quarter inch of clear, and then we can add our wave lacing. Now, normally with these waves, you would use like a white alcohol pigment or a liquid pigment to tint the resin, and you just use such a tiny little amount. However, I don't have any of the white alcohol pigment left, so in order to just get this video done and kind of demonstrate it, I just used that pearl pigment. You're not going to have the same lacing and same wave effect. You'll still get the waves, but it just won't be as cool as if you used a proper liquid pigment. So I'm going to go ahead and pour our final coat of clear until everything is covered, but obviously not over the top of the mold. All right. Take our heat gun, turn it on. We're going to do our waves. Now, some people would let the clear resin set for, you know, half an hour just to get a little bit more gel-like before you do this. Oops. You can see it's working. It's just, you know, you don't have the same effect with these waves that you would with like a regular liquid alcohol white pigment. Still pretty cool though. Got like a silver shimmer to them. And what's really cool about doing like a full resin pour with one of these surfboards versus just like coloring, you know, layering resin on top of, you know, a wood surfboard is that you get a lot of depth. You can't really see it here in the video, but you know, these waves, they look like legitimate waves on top of the water rather than just part of the water. Because we have so many different layers here. All right, so as you can see, those waves are not awesome. But again, using a proper pigment or coloring for your white resin would go a long way. But that's satisfactory enough for this purpose. And the next cut will be tomorrow when this thing is completely set, and I will demold it and we'll be done. We're back for the big reveal. We can finally demold this after 3 separate layers. And again, this is our 22 by 7 by 1.5 inches deep silicone mold. And watch this, how clean this comes off, just like that. Other than the spill we did on the edge there, there's no resin left on there. And we have our beautiful, solid resin surfboard. And you can kind of see the depth in there. You know, you're not going to get that putting resin on wood. You really need to have a solid piece. And you can see the depth because you actually do have depth. Anyway, if you're looking to get your hands on one of these resin surfboard molds or any of our other big wide format silicone molds, you can go to craftedelements.com. Now we're often out of stock, but you can put your name on a notification list for when that product comes back in stock, if it is out of stock. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy making.